Now, in our Kickstarter, we get to look at overall the picture of celebrating Women's Day, the challenges women are facing in modern day. Now, the backbone of it is that origins of International Women's Day are dating back to the early 20th century, stemming from labor movements as well as women's suffrage activism. Now, over the years, the United Nations has begun to adopt and promote the day, setting annual themes that highlight various aspects of women's rights as well as equality. Now, today, Women's Day is being recognized worldwide. Of course, we're celebrating it in Katakwi district on a national level here in Uganda, and of course, different celebrations are happening at different capacities. Women's rights and celebrating the countless achievements of women throughout history. Now, my discussants this morning, I'm privileged that they are all women, and I'm excited to hear their voices, their inputs, because in one way or another, they're all women leaders. We have a woman leader from UNBOUND. We have a woman leader focusing on democracy and governance, African Youth Development League. We also do have a woman leader in religion. I quite remember the day she was appointed. It was pompous and everyone was excited that yes, and everyone was speaking so much of her vigor and her passion, especially for making sure that those that are in that line of faith walk uprightly. So privileged to be hosting her this morning. My name is Priscilla Regina Naluwu, and allow me have my guests make introductions of themselves, starting with my immediate left.
Thank you very much, and to the ladies in the house, happy Women's Day, and to the ladies out there, happy Women's Day. My name is Naluwu Teddy, and I am the National Coordinator for UNBOUND Kampala. UNBOUND is a community development organization fostering economic sufficiency through empowering women and through education. We target rural communities, rural vulnerable households, working with them on improving their education for the children, especially the girl child, but also working with women and their husbands to improve their incomes, thereby improving economic self-sufficiency, and later on working on hygiene and sanitation in their homes. And so as we celebrate, we are actually in central Uganda, working in 8 districts in Greater Masaka, but also in Mityana, Wakiso, Mpigi, Gomba. And today I'm here to talk about accelerating gender equality and for women's economic empowerment. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Doctor?
Thank you so much. Viewers, I'm Reverend Canon Dr. Nyegenye. I'm the Provost at All Saints Cathedral Kampala. Yes, I was the first woman provost to take on this position. I lead a congregation. My part is more of the spiritual empowerment, because I do believe that when women are empowered spiritually, they can be able to rise up to other levels. I also serve with an organization called CMS Africa, and I think all of us know it as Church Missionary Society. I am their board chair, and that organization helps to empower women in rural areas so that women can be able to get out of poverty and be able to help their children, but also not just it's a long-term thing that when they empower one woman, it's expected that this woman is able to empower the communities. And so we do this through training, mainly. We do this through training women. We get women together and we train them to help them understand how does money become very important, not just to me, but to others. And we teach them to understand money God's way. And that helps a lot. But we also handle matters to do with compassion, where we are able to empower the vulnerable to look after their families by giving them a little bit of money, but we do hope that that money can be able to generate more money. So thank you so much. Welcome.
Democracy and governance has been taking a center stage in this particular week, and so we're privileged to have one from that corner, also in that field. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Priscilla and fellow women on the panel, and good morning viewers out there. My name is Nakabira Nashiba. I work with an organization called African Youth Development League. And I work as the programs officer in charge of democracy and governance. And African Youth Development Link, or AYDL, our major focus is empowerment of youth to participate in governance and development processes through the different approaches of advocacy, capacity building, strategic communication, and of course building strategic coalitions with the like-minded partners. And our work is basically anchored on three thematic areas, that is democracy and governance. We have gender and human rights, as well as socio-economic justice. African Youth Development Link also hosts the Youth Coalition on Electoral Democracy, an entity of about 80 youth-led organizations focused on mobilizing the youth to participate in electoral processes in Uganda. And we are glad that we've made milestones in regard to empowering the women and girls out there. And yes, happy International Women's Day to everyone. Today we are celebrating the milestones attained by women, and also shining a spotlight on what more that needs to be done in line with harnessing women economic empowerment and leadership.
Okay, well, this is a very beautiful panel that I have with me this morning. We have in my immediate left investing in the women economically, then we are investing in the women spiritually, and of course we're investing in the women in leadership. Now, holistically, they are the best to give us their perspectives on Women's Day and what it actually means for women in Uganda in particular, from their different perspectives. I'll start with you, Teddy. This day, how important is it for you in the line of work that you do, and also from the experience that you've had on ground interacting with women from all spheres and walks of life?
Thank you very much, Priscilla. Today is very important, not just for me as a woman, but more so for the women I represent, women from rural communities, women that are vulnerable, because today the women are able to celebrate their achievements. You know, their small achievements, especially these women that are able to take on hard activities, walk beyond borders, walk beyond challenges that face them, such as illiteracy rates, such as not being able to own property, such as not even having the ability to they face gender-based violence. But looking at the history that they're going through, but again being able to take care of their families, their children, and looking at even what other women have to celebrate, such as those in leadership, such as those in a business, I think it's very important because they are milestones, like my friend said. But there's also a history hinged to our social cultural norms, looking at the inequalities between men and women, and all those, looking at that history, looking at the progress we have right now, but later on what the bright future holds for the women. It's worth celebrating.
You've mentioned cultural inequalities. From your engagements, what are the present day cultural inequalities that women face?
And I'll still insist on the rural communities, because that's where we are really rooted.
And they're equally women.
So the cultural inequalities relate to how women are actually perceived as having social roles of taking homes, and therefore not being allowed an opportunity to get into business, to be able to earn, but rather taking care of their homes. So being kept away from necessary information, and that means they are not exposed well enough to even walk out of their communities, to be able to take on bigger roles. So that said, in my opinion, those are inequalities compared to their counterparts, the men who are able to walk away free. They can afford to leave their families behind and go find employment. They can even go to school. For instance, in rural communities, comparing girls to boys, girls will stay home to take care of their siblings, while boys are actually attending school. So all these, in my opinion, are inequalities, because women are being prepared for marriage, and so prepared, staying home for such activities, but meanwhile their counterparts have the opportunity to enjoy better opportunities that ultimately cause these inequalities. And guess what? For women that come out of such spheres, that overcome such obstacles, they are looked at as maybe lacking some women qualities, and which is not actually defiant, which is really unfair on women. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Reverend, you're one who deals with the body, the mind, and the soul. Let's talk about, you know, especially for our African cultures, how they've actually shaped women that we see today, and why they have to then struggle to find their footing in society above all those challenges.
Yeah, when you look at a woman, actually in the culture, as my sister was talking about it, some of the women have been shaped by these cultural stereotypes. You should not do this, you should not get involved in the other. And some of them, those things are holding them captive. Even when we talk about empowering a woman, some of them are still being held captive.
Can I twist it a little bit, because you mentioned earlier that you were the first provost.
Yes.
So can you tell it to us from your personal experience? One as a lady, and then in the religious sphere, there's not enough space. You have to still struggle your way through it as a woman. So how was that journey like for you?
Yes, that journey has not been easy. It's not an easy journey to struggle through. First of all, in my own perspective, by the time I started getting into this ministry as a religious leader, one of the things that I was actually told, even by the people, even by fellow women, that this is a space for men, and so it is not space for women. And I remember my very first visit to a rural parish, so many women gathered and so many people were gathered. And one of the reasons they gathered was, does she dress like a man? Does she speak like a man? Does she also do things the way male do them? So there is that kind of thing that those certain professions have been assigned to men and certain professions have been assigned to women. And so it looks like a shock for you to get into a certain space. So also being the first lady to get into this first space was like a shock to many. They had never expected it. The particular church I'm serving had a constitution, and their constitution was telling them that there is no woman who will ever be in this space. The woman can only be an assistant, it cannot be the head. And so getting into that space is like, well, you are actually occupying a male space, and so it's not easy to be able to occupy that male space. But having been in that space for this almost, this is now the 6th year in that space, I realized that there is a lot of acceptance and many people beginning to think actually it is true that women can be able to occupy this space.
On the side of men, how did they receive you encroaching on their space?
Well, you know, in Christianity, sometimes people don't come out visibly to show that this is our space, but sometimes you can see it on their faces and somewhere the way the way the relationships happen with you around there, and the talks in the background will all show you that you're actually into an unacceptable space. But I think the most important thing is to know why you are in this space, what have you come to do in this space, and do what you have come to do and do it well without concentrating on the negatives. And I think for me that is what has given me the victory in this space.
And what other victories have you registered with your leadership in the 6 years?
Well, in 6 years, a lot of things have happened. A lot of changes have happened around, especially in infrastructure. I found a cathedral that was in the process of completion, and I'm looking at it this year and I'm thinking, well, we've come a long way, and hopefully this year we should be able to accomplish this space. There are other general things in the congregation. The first 2 years, of course, we were so much affected because I came in 2019, and as I was just taking over the space, then the lockdown came in 2020, 2021. But even in that space, I saw a lot that God was doing, because I had to stand and be able to make the church alive during that lockdown. As good enough I stay near the church, and so I was able to stay in that space and keep the church alive for those 2 years, doing basically some of the things single-handed, but I had to make sure that the services were running and everything was happening. And actually for some people that was the place of acceptance, knowing that yes, I'm a lady, but I can be able to occupy this space and be able to stand even when I'm alone and be able to do the work and keep the church alive and keep the church going. But it's also around that time that I was able to experience women that were really struggling financially, walking to the church space and then sharing their burden, some of them coming on foot, coming with the children, and they really don't know what to do. But we were able to support in the ways that, because at church, what happens actually, people can bring, if you have 10 bags of posho, if you have beans, if you have anything, you bring it to church, and then we can be able to share it with the women that do not have. So that is how we were able to manage.
All right, so why I went into these directions, because we later on have to have that hard discussion on the theme being invest in her. Now, women refuse to continuously invest in fellow women by and far. It's one of the challenges that is spoken of every woman. And then also on the other side, we were having a corridor conversation with the guys downstairs, and they were saying that if you want to invest in a woman, you start by investing in a man. So later on, we'll be digging into the details of that. Nashiba, you know, from the testimony of Reverend Dr. here, I know that, of course, she's on a senior level. You dealing with the youth must be even tougher for them to understand that they're in an era where they have the ability to lead, to strive in every form, regardless of, you know, the incapacities that are around them. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, of course, especially the female youth, they are having a challenge of, participating meaningfully and effectively in leadership and decision-making spaces, partly because of the issues which my colleagues have already highlighted, especially when it comes to stereotypes from the different people about their capacity, the gender stereotypes, where a given segment of people in the community still do believe that women cannot lead. So you find that because of those stereotypes and beliefs, you find that the young women are, the female youth in this case are at the periphery of decision making. So you find that in the space where key decisions are made, they are not there. So how are they going to address and work on their needs when they are actually not part of the decision making spaces? So of course, because they lack access to the factors of production such as land and everything, and the limited support offered by the community and the immediate members, especially the males in their lives. So you find that the women, they have the barriers, the burden that kind of limit them from meaningfully participating in leadership. For example, at one point we were trying to establish, we are doing a study about female youth and how they participate in leadership and whether the males do participate, and we are meeting their fellow males. So the males were saying that we cannot support the females because before we know, they will get married and we shall remain with no leader. So we were trying to make an assessment at the local level, assessing if the males have the trust to give leadership, to support the women on lower positions. But their attitude was kind of negative, and that represents what... The young people and yes, exactly. Where did their mind get corrupt? You see?
What point did their mind get corrupt?
It's quite absurd because the question of whether you're married or not keeps on popping up even when it comes to leadership and contesting for political positions. You find that a woman who is not married they might not even get supported, you know, to vie for a given political position. The first question will be, who is your husband? And you'll be like, is this the only issue that, you know,
when you see me,
I have the potential to represent. I'm empowered. I'm aware of your needs and issues. I can table them and deliberate on them adequately. But you're here saying that because I'm not married, you're not trusting me with that leadership position. So those are the kind of issues that we are trying to grapple with, and that kind of keeping the women behind. And also the fact that we have beautiful laws and policies, but when it comes to implementation, there are glaring gaps in terms of how these beautiful laws and policies are implemented. So we have affirmative action in the first place, and you find that the about 34% of members of parliament we have are women, and most of them are on affirmative action ticket. But you find that even those who kind of join parliament as MPs on the affirmative action ticket, they most of the times they do not represent the interests of women out there. Most of the times they front the political party interest, which is quite absurd. So you find that, yes, we have beautiful laws, but how they are implemented needs to be looked into, and maybe if we as stakeholders, we need collaborative efforts on how best we can address some of the gaps in our laws and policies. Okay,
all right. It's a tough world for women in 2024, when you'd have thought that things should be, you know, easier. Looking at the theme this year, the theme is invest in her, accelerating progress. And now, Teddy, in that regard, especially on the economic side, first of all, what is this theme addressing in particular for women as we focus on them in this 21st century? And also, what gaps do you feel have been identified in which women are not progressing?
Thank you, Priscilla. First of all, talking about women's economic empowerment, the things we look at is inclusion, financial inclusion. We will look at women in employment. We will look at women owning businesses, you know, so that would actually sum up to mean when we talk about economic empowerment, that's what we are talking about. And so looking at, let's assess a little bit of how women are actually involved in such. For instance, women owning business, and just looking at the national statistics, men versus women, it is that men are at 56% and women at 44%. That shows that women are actually down. And now the financial inclusion bit, that's a little bit closer, 78 versus 77 for women, but still women lower. And employment, women are at 48% and men at 52. So basically in all this bit of economic empowerment, women are still left behind, and it is worse with the rural communities where they are into informal business. They are farming, but they do not own the land on which they farm. They go ahead and do the farming, but the proceeds go to the men. So that means that they are left with almost nothing. And that said, it's already a gap in itself that how are women supported to be able to benefit from the labor, their own labor. I mean, the question also would come to government as to how these inequalities are being addressed to ensure that we accelerate the abilities of women. But again, as a gap would be like, how do we address such gaps? Because knowing that ownership, and by the way, I want to applaud the government that, like our friend said, policies are in place, laws are in place. For instance, we have the Succession Act that well caters for women. Looking at our Constitution, Article 33 provides for women's rights, but also affirmative action under Article 32. All these are meant to ensure that women's abilities are uplifted, but we need to look at the implementation of these. For instance, what is the thought of the implementers? Quickly going, say, like to the police, because it's a gap, for instance, when it comes to gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is one of the challenges, especially with the rural communities. And now, when women are up to speak up for their rights, that they are being abused, you will go to police posts, and no offense to the police, by the way, and I'm speaking for those where we work and the experience we've had. And then a man will go like, a woman is reporting that they are being hit by the husband, and then the police goes like, naye yakuwasa. I mean, that is quite offensive, you know. And you're already pushing this lady to go back and that's not appropriate. But again,
and it was actually a female officer who received this case of a battered woman by her husband. And she said, what did you do to him? But she's bleeding, her teeth are out. And that was the first question. What did you do to provoke him?
So already that is a gap that would hinder them. I mean, the woman is complaining that we have had this effort of growing crops, but all the proceeds are being taken away for the man to drink, and then they're like, but it's his land. I mean, already that's kind of denial. How is this woman going to develop? How are they going to further their interests, especially if already the community, already the implementers look at their empowerment in a different perspective?
Doctor, this is a tough one. But I know that you meet people from all walks of life, you know, and so invest in her accelerating progress. Where do you feel, which gaps are presently existing that this theme should be addressing?
Yeah, I think there are so many gaps that are existing, and that is why I begin at the spiritual empowerment. But I have received the ladies one after the other, and you really see that if there was this problem was not there, this woman would be very far, because they start a business, and as the husband sees this business really going very fast, then he realizes by the time this woman gets money, she's going to be on top of the world. And therefore, what they do is to make sure that they disconnect the lady from this business, and all of a sudden the business collapses, and this lady is left without anything. And some men say, I think you can stop this and we work together. And then they begin to work together. 1-2 years, he's supporting and giving her some money to take care of her needs. After that, they withdraw, cut her off that business, and then that woman stays at home. And then she stays at home, she begins to suffer, she has nothing to give the children. Men just go off there into extramarital relationships, and at the end of the day, they end up actually even cutting off this lady from the family. And therefore, some women, you have been cut off from your work, you were stopped from working, you have no source of income. This man says, now you have to get out of my family, you've left the children back, you are groaning, you want to see your children, but actually you are also thinking, but if I take the children, where will I get the money to pay the fees? So you are leaving your children to suffer. Your children are being suffocated here, you don't have the fees, you are suffering, you're moving from one place to place. Your fellow ladies, some families accommodate you for today, they will not sustain it, the other one also. Even your own mother reaches a point of saying, please, I think I can no longer accommodate you. And worse is when you have to bring the children, and then sometimes the man is resisting, I have to keep the children. They have cut you off from the children. So a woman stays in a total dilemma, emotionally, physically, financially, totally broken down. And so even when you're praying with this lady, then you're thinking about what next. So the next step, where do I get this lady to go so that her case can be listened to? But as she said, this lady will tell you, went to police, but the police know my husband, and so there is nothing they are going to do about it. And this lady remains in that kind. So domestic violence has contributed to the breakdown of the women's economic progress. When they try something small, the husbands come in and just make them useless. And some of them, their businesses, okay, sometimes a husband can begin a business for them. Along the way, they just begin withdrawing money slowly, and at a certain point they tell them, I gave you the business. Now your business has collapsed. For some of them, they give you a business. Before the business grows, they withdraw from the family, from supporting the family, and they tell these ladies, I gave you the business, and therefore this business must feed the family, must pay the fees. This lady is struggling, carrying the children to school on border. The man drives off and goes away. I gave you the money, I expect to find food on the table. So this lady ends up, the business is collapsing, and when the business collapses, he tells him, I gave you the business. You have collapsed the business. But how can I use this small business for everything that I have to do in the home?
Reverend, my eyes are almost popping out of my sockets because of, you know, what you're sharing with us. And it begs the question, how do we reverse that? How do we have a call to action in investing in that woman?
It is sometimes very difficult. Sometimes you feel like, I think I need a man to sit here so that we can be able to address both these parties together. But in most cases, the men are very reluctant. Very reluctant. They do not want to come and face the reality. And when you ask this lady, can I meet your husband? They say, Reverend, I don't want my husband to know that I even came to you. I just wanted you to pray for me so that I can be able to handle the situation. But you're seeing the situation is almost next to impossible. But my prayer is that actually men would be willing to come so that this ignorance is taken out of them, so that they understand, even they themselves know that you cannot have this small business and everything is into this small business, no profits are coming out, and you're quarreling with this woman for not growing the business. So I think for me, we need a table where men are sitting and women are sitting, and we can talk openly about these issues so that they get to know the reality of what the women are facing. But my sister, it is hard to draw the woman to that round table, but could create a solution.
Yeah, my producer is very good at bringing people on the table. So since it's Women's Month, maybe by the close of this month, we can have men in between here, and so that we can have a balanced conversation. Okay, back to you, Nashiba. Investing in her and accelerating progress amidst the challenges, and you mentioned earlier, mindset being one of them. How are you continuously fostering investment in, you know, the young women, the youths, so that they can be able to progress?
One of the ways in which we are fostering empowerment, especially among young women, is through capacity building and trying to work collaboratively with the different stakeholders to foster gender equality. And when we talk about gender equality, sometimes the men and the boys, they misunderstand. When we talk about gender equality, we are talking about being able to access opportunities equally. If you're able to take the girl to school, then the boy child also stands an opportunity to also go back to also go to school, and the parent does not have to weigh in between who of these two am I supposed to take to school. And when it comes to accessing, for example, a job opportunity, we advocate that women should be given equal access to opportunities, and that is what we talk about when we say gender equality. And what we do as an African Youth Development Link is we try to build the capacity of these young women through what we call the leadership in action trainings, whereby we provide them with the skills, financial literacy, business management skills, so that they are able to identify and create an income generating project of their own. So we attach them to mentors who continuously monitor them and guide them, and also we keep them in touch with the district officials and other stakeholders to make sure that in case there are any other available opportunity, these girls are able to tap into those opportunities. Basically, we also try to foster and promote positive masculinity among the men, because ladies here will agree with me, the men, because of the patriarchal society which we have, they have the power, they still have the power to make decisions, whereby even when you call for a capacity building engagement, a husband or a spouse to this young woman can say, she's not going anywhere, she's going to cook for me, she's not going to attend that training. So what we need to do, and what we've continuously done as AYDL, is to engage the males, to bring them on board so that they're able to use their masculinity positively to support the women and the girls in their lives. So we've tried to invite them for meetings, to engage them, and we are seeing positive results, because they are now appreciating, and they are even more supportive to their, you know, women. So another issue that I would talk about is addressing the gaps in policy, and also trying to ensure that when it comes to, you know, budget allocations, it is always gender sensitive. It is responsive to the needs of women, the needs of men, the needs of girls and boys, so that at the end of the day, if we say that we look into our education, how are we supporting more the young girls who are affected by, you know, high rates of dropouts, to be able to increase their enrollment in school. So basically, we've continued with advocacy as African Youth Development Link. We've continued with empowering the girls and building their capacity, and also sensitizing the males using the male model engagement to bring the men on board for to be able to support their female counterparts.
Okay, stakeholders, clearly the men on top of the stakeholders list for engagement. And Teddy, I'd like you to speak into that, as you said, just how men, amongst other stakeholders, can actually get involved in ensuring that they emphasize the urgency and importance of investing in women, not just for the benefit of the woman, but benefit of the family, community, and nation.
One thing I want to emphasize is that and implore the men as a way to ensure women are accelerating their abilities of gender equality is that let them send the girl child to school, because it's them that always have the power to decide which children should stay at home or which children should go. So I implore them to undertake that, but also to consider to be gender responsive by ensuring that they discuss with their wives. It takes away nothing for the men discussing about the financial opportunities and even sharing proceeds, planning for those proceeds. Why? Because ultimately, and from experience, for women and men that have worked well together on their incomes, they have excelled all across in their family development. So I would encourage men to take on that, because women are no threat, but rather a big time support for their economic development. But also I would implore the implementers of policies and the laws to adopt what the instruments of government, the legal instruments, actually do mention. For instance, if it's affirmative action, let them focus where women have been left behind. Let them focus on ensuring that these women are supported, especially when talk about the local councils. How well are women represented on those councils to be able to voice the issues of the women they represent? Again, and also talking about the analysis. Let them take these analysis, because oftentimes you're working with people, but they don't even actually realize how left behind the challenges that people have, but until you talk about it and it's all news to them. So it's important that when they have information, let them even give it to the very people, such as the women, the men, such that they understand the situations, and that way they are able to work on such challenges. But as a key factor that I want to emphasize, and even to the fellow women and the girls, staying in school, allowing them to access education for completion and transition into higher levels, delays marriage, but not only delays marriage, but allows them, it's the only platform I've known where the poor and the rich can compete favorably as a result of education. So I would encourage the men, I would encourage the women, I would encourage all stakeholders to ensure that they send children to school, more so the girl child.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. Dr. Rebecca, you're in a very interesting position. Why do I say that? I remember during COVID-19, one of the people that the government was running to help them, share the message against COVID-19 was the religious leaders, meaning that you are a very big stakeholder in this conversation being fair, balanced, and equitable for all. And so in regards to that, what would be your recommendations? What would be your suggestions in ensuring that it's a balanced ground for both men and women, because we can't leave that out?
Yeah, we can't leave that out, and for me the way forward is the religious leaders can still be able to spearhead this, because we have a way in which we can be able to attract people to come, both men and women, and specifically in couples gatherings, we could be able to have couples that can be able to gather together and we still address them over these matters. It just has to take a collective effort, like in the church. It has to take a collective effort of our top leaders, like for me who is in the Anglican Church, having our Archbishop get involved into this, bringing these men and women together and being able to address them on some of these matters that we are going through. Right. But also helping these many mentorship, I think, is also going to help. We have grounds in the church of Fathers Union, Mothers Union, where we realize that men and women come together, but sometimes they come together but not focused on the real issues. I know, but I think we need to, yes, we need to focus people on the real issues, and people need to face the reality. Okay. The challenge I have is that sometimes we actually do not face the reality, but cover it. We cover it.
And that's a challenge for us women, especially. Yes. We will do the makeup, wear our nice heels and dresses, and show up as if we don't have a problem in the world. I know some ladies who use it as a mask to deal with their problems. And so we need to remove those masks and face our realities. It's the only way we're going to get the reasonable solutions for a progressive future. Invest in her at the end of the day. Now,